Have you ever been disrespected by someone at work or in a social setting and felt like you didn't know how to respond? Maybe it was a rude comment, a condescending tone, or a dismissive remark that left you feeling small and powerless. We've all been there, and it can be tough to know how to handle it without escalating the situation or letting it affect you emotionally. But what if there was a way to remain composed and confident and even turn that disrespect around to your advantage? What if you could transform that moment of disrespect into an opportunity for growth, showing strength, dignity, and resilience, instead of reacting impulsively? In today's world, where emotional manipulation and toxic behavior are becoming more common, it's crucial to have tools in place to protect your peace. Stoic philosophy has taught us how to maintain emotional control and stay grounded, even in the face of disrespect. It's not about letting others walk all over you, but learning how to rise above the negativity and stay true to yourself. If this sounds like something you'd want to learn, then stick with me as we explore Stoic strategies for handling disrespect in both professional and personal situations. Before we dive in, hit that like button and subscribe to the Stoic Narratives official channel for more videos on Stoicism, self-growth, and practical life strategies. Let's get started. Number 1. Leveraging humor and grace to disarm disrespect. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." These words hold a powerful lesson on how to respond to the inevitable moments of disrespect we encounter in life. But how do you handle it when someone undermines you in front of others? Do you lash out, or do you find a way to rise above it with grace? Let me share a story about a young professional who had just started a new job in a fast-paced office environment. One afternoon, during a team meeting, a colleague made a cutting remark that was both rude and unnecessary. The room went silent for a moment, and all eyes turned toward him, waiting for a reaction. Most people would have felt angry, humiliated, or defensive, but he had a different approach. Instead of clapping back or letting the comment ruin his mood, he chose to use humor, a tactic that many Stoic thinkers have praised as a way to diffuse tension. With a calm smile, he responded, Well, that's one way to keep things interesting." Everyone in the room, including the person who made the remark, laughed. The tension disappeared, and his grace under pressure not only disarmed the disrespect, but also earned him respect from his colleagues. The twist here is that he didn't react out of frustration or defensiveness, even though he had every right to. Instead, he turned the situation into something lighthearted, showing that the way we handle moments of disrespect can reveal our inner strength, not weakness. Humor is a Stoic tool often underestimated, but it allows you to deflect negativity while maintaining your dignity. His response was a perfect example of the Stoic principle of not being disturbed by external events, but instead choosing how to react to them. The lesson here is clear. When faced with disrespect, don't allow it to take control of your emotions. By maintaining your composure and sometimes even using humor, you can disarm the situation and keep your peace intact. Remember, Stoics believe that it's not the disrespect itself that causes harm, but our own reaction to it. Humor helps us maintain control over our emotions, allowing us to focus on the bigger picture. So, think about a time when you were disrespected. How did you respond? Did you let the moment dictate your emotional state, or did you find a way to respond with calmness and grace? Next time you face a similar situation, try using humor or a lighthearted comment to shift the energy. It may not only diffuse the moment, but might also give you the strength to remain unshaken in the face of negativity. When you can laugh in the face of disrespect, you're not only mastering your own emotions, but also showing others the power of Stoic grace. Number 2. Building emotional immunity against online trolling. As the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice." In a world where online trolling and harsh comments can feel like a constant storm, this timeless advice has never been more relevant. It's easy to get swept up in the flood of negativity online, but the Stoic approach teaches us to build emotional immunity against such attacks. Let me share a story about a content creator who had recently ventured into the world of social media. His videos gained some attention, And with that attention came a wave of criticism. One comment stood out. "Why even bother? You're wasting everyone's time." Most people would have felt the sting, maybe even fired back with a sharp reply or deleted the comment in frustration. But he took a different path. Instead of letting the troll's words invade his peace of mind, he thought about it from a Stoic perspective. He realized that the comment was more about the person who wrote it than about him. As Epictetus wisely put it, we cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. He didn't let the troll's words define his emotional state. Instead, he took a step back, laughed a little at the absurdity of it, and moved on. But here's the twist. Despite being a content creator whose work depends on audience engagement, he wasn't interested in pleasing everyone. He understood that not every opinion would align with his purpose. His emotional immunity was built on accepting that he couldn't control others' reactions, but he could control how he let those reactions affect him. He didn't just shrug it off as haters gonna hate. He took it as an opportunity to deepen his understanding of his own emotional resilience. Isn't it fascinating how, in the face of negativity, it's often our own reaction that causes the most harm? The words we read online, whether from strangers or acquaintances, can sting, but they only have power if we allow them to. Marcus Aurelius' reminder rings true here. If someone does wrong, it is because they are misguided, and it is not for you to bear the weight of their mistake. This principle isn't just about learning to brush off rude comments, it's about reclaiming control over our emotional space. You might be wondering, but how can I ignore something that seems so personal? The answer lies in accepting that we cannot control the actions of others, but we can control our reactions. If you find yourself getting caught in a cycle of emotional turmoil because of a harsh online comment, pause for a moment, take a breath. Remind yourself that the words of others are a reflection of them, not you. Just like he did, you have the power to choose not to be offended. And once you make that choice, you've already won. What would happen if, instead of reacting emotionally to every troll, you started seeing each comment as an opportunity to strengthen your inner peace? Imagine that every critical remark becomes a stepping stone in your journey toward emotional immunity. Wouldn't that change the way you approach online interactions? The next time you face a troll's comment, take a moment to pause and ask yourself, is this worth letting into my emotional world? You might find that the more you practice Stoic principles, the more immune you become to the negativity around you. You'll realize that online trolling only has power over you if you allow it to. So just as he did, take control of your emotional space and rise above the noise. Remember, when you build emotional immunity against online trolling, you're not just protecting yourself from negativity, you're fostering a stronger, more resilient version of yourself. And that, my friend, is a Stoic victory. Number 3. Setting boundaries in personal relationships. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus wisely said, no man is free who is not master of himself. In the context of personal relationships, this freedom often begins with setting clear boundaries. We all know that one person constantly takes more than they give, whether it's time, energy, or emotional support. You know the type. The one who calls you at all hours, assumes you'll drop everything for them, or expects you to tolerate bad behavior without so much as a word of complaint. How many times have you wished you could just say, enough is enough, but felt like you couldn't? Well, here's the good news. You absolutely can. Let me tell you a story about a content creator. He was someone who loved to help others. He often gave his time freely, even when he had his own projects to work on. But there was one person, a close friend, who consistently took advantage of his generosity. This friend would call him late at night, demanding emotional support, often leaving him feeling drained and frustrated. One evening, after an especially exhausting conversation with his friend, he found himself thinking, I can't keep doing this. I need to protect my own peace. So he decided to try something different. The next time his friend called late, instead of answering with his usual willingness, he set a boundary. He politely told his friend that while he cared deeply for them, he couldn't continue to sacrifice his own well-being. He needed time to recharge, and if they truly valued their friendship, they'd respect his needs. At first, his friend was upset. There was a bit of pushback, even a little guilt tripping. But he stood firm, remembering the Stoic principle that it is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. By not letting his friend's disappointment or anger sway him, he practiced emotional resilience. The unexpected twist? His friend, after a brief period of adjustment, respected his boundaries and even thanked him for being honest. How many of us have allowed relationships to drain us because we didn't know how to say no? How many times have we avoided setting clear boundaries, believing that saying no would damage the relationship? But here's the thing. Relationships, whether personal or professional, need healthy boundaries to thrive. Without them, you end up compromising your own happiness and well-being. As he learned, when we set clear limits, we actually teach others how to treat us. But setting boundaries isn't always as simple as drawing a line in the sand. There's often fear involved, fear of confrontation, fear of rejection, fear of disappointing others. Yet consider this. If you don't set boundaries, you're the one who suffers in the long run. Is it really worth sacrificing your emotional peace to maintain a relationship that doesn't honor your needs? He could have easily fallen into the trap of feeling guilty for taking a step back, but he chose to see his boundaries as an act of self-respect, not selfishness. In doing so, he ensured that the relationships he nurtured were grounded in mutual respect and understanding. So, the next time someone oversteps your limits, ask yourself, what would happen if I calmly and confidently set a boundary? Would you feel stronger? Would the relationship be healthier? Reflecting on his story, think about your own life. Are there relationships where you've been afraid to set boundaries, perhaps out of a desire to please others or avoid conflict? What would it look like if you prioritized your own well-being without guilt? In the long run, setting boundaries isn't about shutting people out. It's about protecting yourself and ensuring that the relationships you invest in are the ones that contribute positively to your life. Remember, as Epictetus said, the key to true freedom lies in mastering yourself. And part of that mastery involves knowing when to say no, when to stand firm, and when to protect your peace. So, what boundaries do you need to set in your life today? Number 4. The pause technique, a modern take on restraint. As the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This profound insight reminds us that while we can't control the world around us, we do have control over how we respond to it. And sometimes the best response is not to respond at all, at least not immediately. This is where the pause technique comes into play. Let me tell you about a man. He was a guy who, like many of us, had a tendency to react impulsively. Whether it was a sharp comment at work or an angry text from a friend, he would dive straight into his response, often regretting it later. One day, his boss sent him an email with a rather blunt critique of his latest project. He, feeling a rush of frustration, immediately typed out a reply. Sharp, defensive, and filled with emotion. He was about to hit send when he remembered a piece of Stoic wisdom. What we do now echoes in eternity. Instead of sending the email, he stopped. He closed his laptop, took a deep breath, and walked outside for a brief walk in the sun. In that moment of pause, he realized that his immediate reaction, though satisfying in the short term, would only escalate the situation and damage his relationship with his boss. By practicing restraint, he was able to compose himself and craft a thoughtful response later that acknowledged the critique and presented his side of things calmly. His boss appreciated the maturity in his response, and he felt better about the whole situation. It's interesting, isn't it? How often do we let our emotions take the driver's seat? How many times have we blurted out something we regretted, only to realize that wasn't the smartest move? We live in a world where reactions are immediate, and we often feel pressured to respond quickly, whether it's to a text, an email, or even a conversation. But by using the pause technique, we allow ourselves the space to think before we act, much like the Stoics taught. Let's be real, it's not always easy. We're wired to respond quickly, to defend ourselves, to react. But think about it. What if that instant response, instead of solving the problem, only makes it worse? Imagine if, instead of jumping into an argument with a loved one, you took a moment to breathe and reflect. Would the conversation take a different turn? Could you respond with more empathy, understanding, or even humor? The pause technique helps us create that space. Now, let's throw a little twist into this. One day, he was out with his friends at a crowded bar, enjoying a lively conversation, when suddenly, one of his friends made an offhand remark about a project he had worked on months ago. His friend's tone wasn't exactly friendly, and he could feel the familiar spark of irritation rising inside him. Normally, he would have shot back with something snarky, a quick defense to protect his pride. But this time, he remembered his practice of pausing before reacting. He took a deep breath and chose to smile, replying with, "Oh, I hadn't thought of it that way. Good point." His friends were taken aback, but they laughed, and the tension dissolved instantly. He later realized that by not reacting impulsively, he not only avoided a potential conflict, but also diffused the situation entirely. It's funny how we sometimes forget the power of restraint. What would happen if we all took a second to pause before reacting? Imagine how much calmer and more collected our interactions could be. Wouldn't it be nice to navigate those tense moments with a little more ease and a lot less regret? The next time you feel that rush of emotion ready to spill over, ask yourself, what will happen if I just take a moment to pause? Could that simple act of restraint change the course of the conversation? Could it allow you to respond more thoughtfully and ultimately find more peace in the situation? The pause technique isn't just a tool, it's a practice. It's about gaining mastery over ourselves, something that the Stoics understood well. As Marcus Aurelius put it, it's not the events themselves that cause us distress, but how we choose to react to them. By pausing, we choose to respond with intention rather than impulse. So, the next time you find yourself on the verge of reacting, remember his story and give yourself the gift of the pause. After all, in that moment of stillness, you might just find the strength to master yourself. Number 5. Reframing perspective in professional conflicts. We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Meet him, a project manager at a growing startup. He's sharp, dedicated, and has big dreams for the future. But lately, things haven't been going as smoothly at work. A particular conflict with his colleague has been consuming his thoughts. They've been butting heads over how to manage a key project, and the tension has reached a boiling point. His colleague has been dismissive of his ideas, and he feels completely misunderstood. It's frustrating. It feels personal. He wonders, why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? Before reacting, he remembers a Stoic teaching that immediately shifts his perspective. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. He pauses, takes a breath, and thinks for a moment. He starts to reframe the situation. What if it's not about his colleague at all? What if it's about how he's choosing to interpret her actions? He could see this as a personal attack, but what if he saw it as an opportunity for growth instead? Could this conflict teach him something about communication, leadership, or even patience? As he rethinks the situation, he wonders, what's the worst that could happen if I choose to step back and look at this more objectively? He realizes that the emotions he's feeling are driven by his perception of his colleague's behavior, not necessarily by the behavior itself. Maybe she's dealing with her own stressors and taking them out on the project. Maybe she isn't as invested in the project as he is. Whatever the reason, his anger and frustration aren't helping the situation. In fact, they're making it worse. What would happen if he simply responded with calmness, letting go of the need to be right? Could he approach this conflict without the emotional charge that was weighing him down? He decides to take a different approach. Instead of continuing to escalate the situation with his colleague, he invites her to a private conversation. He doesn't go in with an agenda or a defensive attitude. Instead, he listens, truly listens, to what she has to say. The twist? In the meeting, his colleague opens up about the pressure she's been under. She's overwhelmed with deadlines and has been feeling out of her depth. In the past, he might have gotten defensive and escalated the conflict, but this time, he reframed the situation. By acknowledging her struggles, he found a way to connect, not through frustration, but through understanding. The conflict wasn't personal after all. It was about managing competing pressures. Through reframing his perspective, he had turned a potential battle into a collaboration. His decision to reframe his perspective was a simple one, but it carried powerful results. Instead of reacting impulsively, he took control of the situation by controlling his response. As the Stoics taught, we cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. By choosing to detach from the emotional charge, he transformed his approach to professional conflict. He was no longer trapped in a cycle of frustration and resentment. He was open to learning and growing from the experience. So what's the lesson here? How often do we find ourselves caught in the heat of a professional conflict, assuming the worst about the other person's intentions? It's easy to take things personally, to see the world through a lens of frustration or anger. But the Stoic practice of reframing can shift that. What if, instead of seeing a colleague's actions as an attack on your abilities or character, you saw them as an opportunity for deeper understanding or even personal growth? Could you detach from the emotional chaos and focus on what really matters, resolving the issue at hand? The next time you find yourself in the middle of a professional conflict, ask yourself, is this really about me? Or could this be a chance to rise above the noise, detach from the drama, and engage with the situation from a place of calm and clarity? Just like him, you have the power to change the narrative. When we choose to reframe our perspective, we don't just diffuse conflict, we invite understanding, respect, and collaboration. So what about you? Have you ever found yourself in a situation where reframing your perspective made all the difference? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your experiences with Stoic philosophy in action. Number 6. Cultivating a resilient inner dialogue. As Marcus Aurelius wisely said, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. This quote serves as a powerful reminder that our inner dialogue shapes not just how we perceive the world, but how we experience it. A resilient inner dialogue, the kind that remains calm and steady in the face of adversity, can be the difference between sinking into frustration and rising above challenges. This is where Stoic philosophy can make a profound impact on our lives, especially when we face setbacks or external criticism. Take the story of a project manager at a busy advertising firm. He had always been known for his drive and determination, but recently his work had come under scrutiny. A major presentation he had put together had received harsh feedback from both clients and his own team. It stung. For days, he couldn't shake the feeling of embarrassment. His inner voice echoed relentlessly. "You messed up. You'll never be good enough. This is just proof that you're not cut out for this." At first, he found himself spiraling into negativity. The thought of going back to work the next day filled him with dread. He even started questioning his career choices. But then, in a moment of clarity, he remembered something essential. His response was within his control. What if, instead of spiraling deeper, he could shift his perspective and turn this setback into an opportunity for growth? He decided to apply the Stoic principle that what we do now is what matters. He paused, took a deep breath, and chose to challenge his inner critic. Rather than letting that harsh voice dominate, he asked himself, what can I learn from this? How can I improve and do better next time? Slowly, his inner dialogue shifted. Instead of focusing on the failure, he began to focus on actionable steps for improvement. It's a simple yet profound change. Instead of being at the mercy of his negative thoughts, he decided to steer them. The idea that we can take control of our thoughts may sound like a cliché, but in the midst of turmoil, it is one of the most empowering things we can do. His resilient inner dialogue became a powerful tool. With this newfound mindset, he started looking at the feedback as a gift, something to refine his skills, not a judgment of his worth. He went into the office the next day with a sense of purpose, determined to use the criticism to fuel his growth. Now here's the unexpected twist. During the following weeks, his ability to bounce back, rather than being weighed down by self-doubt, was noticed by his colleagues and superiors. They were impressed by how he had handled the situation. Instead of shying away from the criticism, he embraced it, learned from it, and turned it into a stepping stone toward improvement. By cultivating a resilient inner dialogue, he transformed a potentially demoralizing situation into a leadership opportunity. It's easy to fall into the trap of negative self-talk, right? How many times have you found yourself replaying moments of failure or disappointment, convincing yourself you're not good enough? But imagine for a moment, what if, instead of ruminating on mistakes, you asked yourself, how can I use this to become better? What if you chose to view every setback not as a personal attack, but as an opportunity to grow stronger? By actively practicing a resilient inner dialogue, we begin to shift our perception of the world around us. The obstacles we face are no longer insurmountable walls. They become stepping stones on the path to personal growth and mastery. We stop letting fear of failure control us, and instead, we let challenges become the catalyst for our evolution. So the next time you find yourself facing a challenge or setback, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what is my inner dialogue telling me right now? Is it the voice of self-doubt, or is it the voice of resilience? And how can I shift it toward growth? Because at the end of the day, the quality of your thoughts truly shapes the quality of your life. Wouldn't you agree? In the end, cultivating a resilient inner dialogue is not about ignoring negative thoughts. It's about choosing how to respond to them. Just like he did, you too can choose to take control of your thoughts, view challenges through a stoic lens, and emerge stronger with each experience. Number 7, the power of detachment, choosing what deserves your energy. The greater the difficulty, the more glory in surmounting it. Skillful pilots gain their reputation from storms and tempests. Epictetus. In the fast-paced world we live in, it's easy to find ourselves caught up in a whirlwind of distractions, work deadlines, social media drama, unsolicited opinions. The noise can be deafening, and before we know it, we're exhausted from giving energy to things that don't really matter. This is where the Stoic principle of detachment comes in, reminding us that not everything deserves our emotional investment. It's about choosing where to direct our energy, knowing that we have control over how much we allow ourselves to be affected by the world around us. Take the story of a middle manager at a fast-growing tech company. He was known for his hard work, ambition, and willingness to always lend a hand to his colleagues. But recently, things had been weighing on him. His boss was demanding more, his team seemed disengaged, and personal issues were creeping into his professional life. One day, he received a critical email from a colleague, accusing him of not doing his part in a project. The email was harsh, pointed, and filled with judgment. He sat there, staring at the screen, feeling the sting of each word. At first, his instinct was to respond right away, firing back with a defense. How dare they say that? He thought. I've been putting in the work, and this is how they repay me? But then, something shifted. He remembered the Stoic principle of detachment. He took a deep breath and decided not to react immediately. Instead of rushing into an emotional response, he reflected on what was actually within his control. Did he really need to engage with the negativity, or could he let it go, knowing that his self-worth didn't depend on anyone else's judgment? He chose to detach himself from the emotional charge of the situation. He realized that engaging in an argument or justifying himself would only drain his energy. So, he took a step back and focused on what really mattered: his work, his personal well-being, and his long-term goals. He replied to the email calmly, addressing the issues professionally, but without allowing himself to be dragged into a back and forth. Here's the unexpected twist. Over time, his colleagues started noticing a change in him. His calm demeanor, even in the face of criticism, became something they respected. Rather than getting caught up in office drama, he started focusing on his projects, making steady progress and earning the trust of his team. His ability to detach from the noise and focus on what was truly important allowed him to maintain a clear perspective and stay focused on his goals. Now, isn't that a bit of a plot twist? In a world that often praises overreaction and emotional responses, the true power lies in the ability to detach and choose where to invest our energy. How many times have we found ourselves spiraling into frustration over things that, in the grand scheme of life, don't really matter? And how often do we allow ourselves to be pulled into petty conflicts only to feel drained and disconnected from our true purpose? By choosing to detach from things that don't deserve our energy, we not only preserve our emotional well-being, but also free ourselves to pursue what truly aligns with our values and goals. The Stoic concept of detachment isn't about becoming indifferent or cold. It's about becoming intentional with where we focus our time and emotional resources. It's about recognizing that our energy is finite and deserves to be directed toward what enhances our life, not the distractions that take us away from it. So next time you feel yourself being drawn into a situation that doesn't deserve your energy, ask yourself, is this worth my time? Will it help me grow? Or is this just noise that will fade away in a day or a week? The Stoic principle of detachment invites us to let go of the things that don't serve us and invest in the things that do. Could it be that by choosing to detach, you'll not only preserve your peace, but also find yourself more focused, more aligned with your true goals, and ultimately more fulfilled? The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts, Marcus Aurelius. As we've explored today, mastering the Stoic principle of detachment can be a game changer in how we handle stress, criticism, and life's challenges. By focusing on what truly matters and letting go of the distractions and negativity, we can cultivate a sense of inner peace and clarity. This isn't about being indifferent. It's about being intentional with where we invest our energy. Imagine the power of practicing this every day. Instead of reacting emotionally, you respond with calmness, focus on your goals, and protect your emotional well-being. Over time, this consistent practice will build resilience, reduce anxiety, and help you live a more fulfilling life aligned with your values. Now, ask yourself, what would it look like if you truly applied detachment in your life? How much could you achieve if you stopped letting small things drain your energy? I'd love to hear your thoughts. What's one area of your life where you can apply the principle of detachment starting today? Share your journey in the comments below. Let's build a community of like-minded individuals supporting each other in our pursuit of peace and purpose. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe to Stoic Narratives Official. Stay tuned for more insights and practical Stoic wisdom to help you master your thoughts and achieve lasting happiness.